pandemic. Last week, I thought, had a wonderful discussion of the soul trait of silence, which we will continue. And as is our custom, we will begin with a couple minutes of silence to do a meditation to help us become present and create a sacred space together. So please relax in your chair. Take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. Through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a cloud go past in the sky. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema, and on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, to get us started this week, I thought maybe we would pick up a little bit on where we were last week. And I am curious, how did silence show up for you in the last week, either on the internet or off the internet?
Can I just say,
Yeah.
you just brought it to my attention that every morning I go through this thing. I wake up, I start playing my video games, and I have a whole list of them, like Sudoku and all those things. And then that takes me a while, and then I go off and do. But I actually was probably not on social media unless I was listening to a meditation, which thank you very much for the one you sent me. I've listened to many. But myself, I was actually more speaking. I was communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, I have always been the person that listened. So it's an interesting thing that I recognize. So thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for sharing your kind of self-introspection with us. Who else? Did anyone else notice anything about how speech or silence showed up? Nancy?
Yeah, one is on Facebook. It's just my inbox is inundated with very negative things, and I don't post anything or respond. So that's how my silence stayed in perspective. But I don't know if this really has anything to do with silence. I mean, it does, because it's the reverse of it. And I chose to speak out this week. And amazing things happen. And I'm a musician, and I've been trying to compose some things, and I finished my song. And I reached out to 2 people and I sent it, and the feedback that I got from that has just filled my heart. And it's just like, now I can't stop doing it. I've done 3 more songs last night.
Awesome.
And so it's like kind of the perspective of when should you hold back? Because I was holding back for years because of fear.
Mm.
And when should you speak out, which is the opposite of silence? And it's just amazing when the two kind of intertwine and you find your place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They,
wonderful. Congratulations, Nancy. And our heart is full, that your heart is full, and that's wonderful to hear. Anyone else care to share an experience or observation? Joanne?
Well, I think I don't go on Facebook. In fact, I had closed mine off for a long time, and now I re renewed it, I guess, and put it back. It's on my phone, but I really don't go there. And I tried to make some phone calls because for me, I also have difficulty reaching out, and it's also something that the sisterhood that I belong to, we're trying to do to reach out to synagogue members who, we don't see them now because of COVID, especially the older ones. So I've been trying to, either send emails or make calls, and some of my friends also. And sometimes that's challenging for me, it's like, why don't they call me? And I have one very dear friend, and we finally got to talk on Sunday. So I felt, I feel good about those things. I also tried turning the TV off
Mm.
because I realized, like, I have been in the past in the habit of listening. Well, I'm in the habit of MSNBC for like hours and getting annoyed that everybody says that, after each program they're saying the same thing as the one before.
Mm.
And I realized, like, you listen to a politician, and after 2 minutes or less, it's like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Bye. And I turned it off because, you know, it's just like aggravating and not productive. And it's better to have the silence and like try to do meditation or read something spiritual.
Well, thank you, Joanne. Sounds like a number of examples of reaching out to people and adding more speech, and also then taking away some speech and some noise that was sort of annoying you and not adding to your life. So thank you. Yes, Janet.
I had a similar experience to Joanne. I'm a writer, and that's it's my profession, but it's also much of my identity. On the other hand, I'm also a political junkie, and the two are at cross purposes. And I realized that in order to get ideas, for example, I wrote a piece that needed to be turned around, and I wasn't quite sure how to do it, what I was going to do with it. I was very depressed, so I went to the shower. Everything came back to me, and I realized that I have to create more emptiness in order to get ideas, in order to turn things around. I mean, it's very easy for me to get choked up and to get blocked by all of the noise around me. And by turning that off, it really helped me to break through.
Thank you, Janet. Turning everything off helped you to break through.
awesome, awesome, awesome.
Yeah, Gail.
I use silence to make a space for other people to talk. It's not my greatest strength, and I decided I would make a point of listening more, which I need to do more anyway, and let other people do the talking.
Mm.
Hold my silence so that they could fill it up instead, and it was very effective. People stop and there's a pause, and they think you're going to jump in, and I didn't jump in, and then they come up with more to say.
Mm.
A very effective device.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gail. I'm realizing I had an experience with silence this week as well, where one of my classes that I was signed up for, it was a required class, but I had already read the books on the syllabus, and I was just gonna take it. And I went to the first class, and I was like, I don't need to take this class. Like, I like a lot of the people in here, but I realized that by dropping the class, I could just get a little bit more spaciousness in my life, and I didn't need the credit. And so I just you know, and I was like, oh, you know, is this going to be like any kind of a big deal? Am I going to have to go through this whole rigmarole? And all these voices like trying to talk me out of doing it. But I called a friend and talked to them. They're like, oh yeah, just send the syllabus. So I sent the syllabus to my advisor and he's like, oh yeah, you know all this stuff. Yeah, that'd be a waste of time. Take a different class. And so I'm not taking a different class. I'm just taking 4 classes and having a little bit more space and silence in my life. So I'm really, really, really happy. I mean, it was like my mood improved like 1,000% for the 2 days after that. And so I'm pretty pleased about that. Yeah, Carrie.
COVID. We have had time.
I have a different kind of silence that I've been trying to achieve. We're in a small house and we moved from a much larger house and did not downsize enough. So the house, the space, the living space is very chaotic, very noisy, overstimulating, chaotic. And so I've been spending the week trying to clear everything out, get rid of it so that I have some quiet silence in the living space so that I can concentrate. So that it's a different kind of, and also I stopped watching the news quite a bit. So, but combination of both things.
Well, thank you, Karen. You bring up another great point that part of silence is also silence in the mind. So if there are things in the environment which are sort of creating noise in the mind, then that we can, you know, bring a little order, practice a little order and clean up and simplify, and then that can help us achieve kind of greater silence and peace. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper. Let's see. So we talked about, and thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. I wanted to just spend a moment. I know we've all been doing this for a while, but I do think it's useful from time to time just to review like what Musar is. It's, as Rabbi Eli Lopian said, it's making the heart feel what the mind understands. And some of the tools for a regular practice are a morning mantra to kind of phrase the day and help you kind of remember. And then picking sort of one small action or one thing you can do to move towards balance. And we just heard many people share some actions that they decided to take, to making some changes in their routine and their habits and their lives. And a lot of them were pretty positive. And then another opportunity is journaling at the end of the day. My journaling practice kind of comes and goes. I'm just curious, is anyone here a journaler? Gail, Carrie, Harry, does anyone, would any of you just like to share kind of what role journaling plays in your life, or if, like why you journal and what it brings to you? Gail.
I started journaling actually because I had to when I was being trained by the Musar Institute to teach classes a few years ago. They require you to have journaled for a whole year before they admit you into their Madrichim program. So, you know, it's an unnatural thing. I really wasn't happy about doing it, but I've been doing it faithfully every day for a few years now. And it's really, if you start out the day with a focus phrase like that and you look at opportunities through the day so that you're keeping it on your mind all the time, to capture it at the end of the day, I find it's the most effective time to do it and make it concrete. What were my successes and failures? Did this even present itself during my day? And how did I handle it? And it really makes things come more real and alive for me in whatever I'm practicing, because now I have to articulate them in some logical format. So it's helped. It cements whatever I'm practicing.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. Harry, did I see your hand as well? Did you want to say anything about your journaling practice? You're on mute at the moment.
Hold on.
There you go.
Yeah. I read a book about journaling and it sort of impressed me. And I have this great app called, it's called Day Journal. And it allows me to develop questions that I answer for the morning and questions that I answer for the evening.
Hmm.
And it really helps because you get to focus on and you get to be more mindful.
Great.
And that's really the power of journaling.
Hmm.
You really get to be mindful of what your day was like, what you've done, and what you appreciate.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Nancy.
I don't know if it's appropriate, Greg, to ask a question for those who have journaled or whenever we're talking, but because I've tried it multiple times, the 5-minute journal I tried, and every day I would say the same darn thing because nothing else new would come to mind. And then I'm reading The Artist's Way. If anybody knows that book, and there's a workbook with it. But
Yes.
and it says like write 3 pages in the morning. And I'm just stumped. There's nothing that comes out. Now, if I do a gratitude journal at night, that's very easy because I could do pinpoints,
Mhm.
little bullets of, well, this I'm grateful for. But in terms of journaling, I'm just stuck. So again, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask how people do it or.
It doesn't have to be
A little
beautiful
time on
prose. It can be
talking about silence. It's most our practice a little. So yeah, absolutely. Carol.
I read that or looked at that book a long time ago, Nancy, and I have been doing my morning pages for a lot of years. I probably at least 10. I call it my morning dump because it's just whatever. And yes, it gets repetitive and it's boring. And if you read it, you'd say, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's like, oh, look, it's raining outside. Yesterday I did this. Today I want to do this. I don't feel very well. I mean, it's nothing. Just write whatever comes in your mind. Don't overthink it, is what I tell myself. Is don't think about it. Because I write a lot anyway. So the idea of adding a Musar journal is like, wait, I'm doing this morning dump. I'm doing an evening log, which is I just write what I did and where I went, who I saw or talked to. And I do a gratitude list, which is bullet points. I do 15 gratitudes every night. So I'm thinking, okay, and add this on top of the poetry and stories I'm writing and stuff. That's a lot of writing. And my posts and entries that I do on Facebook.
I think we get the picture, Carol.
It's like, enough already.
You're already doing it.
Yeah, but I'm not doing the Musar.
Okay.
Well, but
Yet. I say yet.
Anyone else have any thoughts for Nancy's question?
Well, I was thinking about myself because I used to also do the morning pages, did the Artist's Way many years ago. And then I kind of stopped. And I lately have had this book beside my bed so that I would start. But I was like, I was like, oh, I don't really want to do it in the morning. But I really liked the evening thing. And I thought, my mind goes so fast sometimes that for me to write down, it always was a jumble. And then I thought, we have this technology in our hand where we can just videotape ourselves talking. And so speaking out our thoughts. And I thought that would be kind of an interesting way of journaling. So having maybe one day it will become a blog, who knows? It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, there's also apps you can go voice to text. Most of them just let you, speak and it will type them out. I mean, I would say, Nancy, sort of two thoughts. One is, as Gail was describing the kind of by the book, Musar journaling practice, there we were talking about, like a particular focus. So you could write down like silence, or how did silence show up today? And there's no like minimum or maximum amount you can write. So, if you can't write 3 pages, write 3 words, so yeah. And I would also, it does remind me a little bit, if it's okay for me to say, about, you said you felt a little bit blocked about writing songs, and then that sort of became liberating for you. So there's nothing that says you absolutely you know, you can still do Musar without journaling, and I think we've heard that it can be a real plus. When I do journal, it is a plus for me, but I always try to be a little gentle when I talk about this, because I don't want people to kind of get down on themselves or start feeling bad that, you know, there's something wrong with me because I'm not journaling or whatever. And it's an opportunity and it's a tool. And I had one friend who suffered from anxiety. He said, I tried to journal once, I was up all night. I never tried again. I'm like, okay, yeah, didn't work for you. You know, that's fine.
I was
Yeah,
going to say, yeah, that I like when we have like a motto to focus on, and sometimes, or I try to anyway relate my journaling to whatever the soul trait is that we're working on, because you know, it's that aspect of my life that I'm trying to look at, and it's often clarifying to do that. But I like having a motto also that I can put up and look at.
You know, I'm realizing I haven't been sort of sharing a motto recently, but that's something I can start putting into the emails that come out when we start. Just the focus phrase or a couple of choices to focus on. So thank you. All right, well, this was a lot of intro today, but I think it was really good stuff. I'm going to skip our assumptions. And as we talked about last week, you know, silence, it includes, you know, sort of, you know, if we have too little silence, then we can get hurtful speech. But as more than one person shared, if we have too much silence, we can get sort of lack of helpful speech. Or, you know, not standing up for ourselves, not asking for what we want, not asking, in my case, to, you know, drop this class, which I'm the only one who had, you know, a worry about that. Nobody else, there was like, yeah, this is a no-brainer, you know, not a problem. So finding a way, and I think as we talked about, again last week, the world and the universe was created with speech. You know, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And so we all participate in creating the world around us by choosing when to speak and when not to speak. I wanted to talk about a little bit more about sort of hurtful and helpful speech this week. And so may I have a volunteer to read this first bullet?
One who publicly shames another has no place in the world to come. Pirkei Avot 3:15.
Okay. One who publicly shames another has no place in the world to come. So what is this telling us?
You enter others.
Well, very insensitive, to say the least. And maximizes any hurt that the speech will have.
Yeah, so so shame is something that maximizes hurt. Why don't we talk about shame for just a minute? What does it mean to shame another person?
I guess being critical and negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else? What does it feel like to feel shame? Like Harry, yeah.
Well, it's making you feel more superior.
Yeah.
Than
definitely.
And the other person.
It's belittling the person so that you can feel more powerful, or you can feel better.
Yeah, so it might be something that makes us feel better about ourselves. And how does it make the other person feel? How does it feel when we're ashamed or, you know?
Diminished. Just diminished.
Yeah, very diminished.
Yeah. So why does someone who shames someone else have no place in the world to come? I mean, what if they've done something really bad?
Well, I know the rabbis used to say that if you make the blood drain from someone's face by something you said, that's like you killed them, you know, because the the blood went out.
Yeah, so similar idea. You've really like just given them such an emotional reaction that the blood is drained from their face. It's like killing them. But again, why? Maybe they had it, maybe they had it coming.
It shouldn't have been in public. Maybe.
That's like that old saying, you can't say something nice, don't say it at all. Like it's.
But you are supposed to rebuke a Jew who's doing something wrong, or you need to let people know, a person know if they're off, but you don't have to do it in public.
Yeah, I think you're getting to a point, which is in a later quote, someone there might be a time where you need to speak, but what I think this is saying is there's no time when you should shame someone else. Let's look a little bit more deep. I think I had a couple other quotes about shame on here. Yeah, so someone maybe read the third bullet, please.
I'll read it.
Thanks, Harry.
Shame corrodes the very part of us that believe we are capable of change.
Thank you. So Brene Brown is a sociologist. She's an incredible researcher, an incredible thinker. Has written a lot about, I think she's done a lot of research about shame. And so what is she saying? Why shame is a bad thing?
Well, it makes us powerless to adapt in life. And it's part of life is growing and changing. And if and shame, belittles you, and it makes you unable to change, to adapt, because you don't feel that you're worthy.
Yeah, thank you, Harry.
It shakes your sense of humanity, really, of your own humanity.
Strikes me as that you're raising yourself up by lowering somebody else, but in fact, you're actually lowering yourself.
Yeah, very true.
That is true. That is true. And at the same time, when you're lowering yourself, it can be extremely hurtful and corrosive to that other person as well. It's, it's like the rabbi might be saying with that first one is, yeah, you feel good today. It's like, yeah, I told him, I showed them, but in the world to come, you're gonna pay for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I used to be a big believer in giving people like the brutally honest truth, and I don't have specific memories of shaming people, but I do know that I could be pretty harsh, like when I was in the corporate world, and there were a lot of people that didn't want to work with me. And so in a sense, the world to come for me was, next week when I needed someone to do me a favor, they were not so eager to do a favor for me because I'd been to them in a meeting or something. So, we create our own world and we create our own reality with how we speak and how we don't speak sometimes. I really loved what Harry had to say about really getting into like questions of like self-esteem. It's like, it is so almost chilling. It's like if you really shame someone, it's like they made a mistake or they did something wrong, or maybe they did something really wrong, or they supported someone who you really don't like, but once they start feeling shame and they start feeling worthless, then any kind of hope or change or incentive to change, according to Dr. Brown, just goes away.
Mhm.
Well, I'm familiar with Brene Brown, and she really made her name in the vulnerability TED Talk about vulnerability.
Mm.
That's how shame,
Yeah.
the role shame plays with being vulnerable.
Mm.
But the secret of being a happier or living a whole life is to not be afraid of being vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah,
Very true.
yeah, absolutely.
So you have to be willing to take the shame, if in a sense, and be strong enough to deal with it.
Mm.
Recognize your worth.
Right.
Yeah, she talked a lot about the difference between shame and embarrassment too. Where embarrassment is kind of like doesn't get to that level of sort of self-esteem. It's like, oh my goodness, there your face gets red, the blood doesn't drain out of it, It's like, oops. I never thought of that connection before, but with Joanne's situation, Rabbi's yes.
There's an opposite effect if you have no shame.
Mm.
Ah, right.
Like our ex-president. That was his strength.
Well, without getting into specific examples, but that's why shame's a soul trade. There's a point where having too little shame, if like nothing is beyond, Janos, do you want to unmute yourself? And yeah.
In psychology, we view shame where people have a belief that something is wrong about them. Down the core, they are wrong, or mean or evil. Because when they growing up, they were receiving a lot of shame on you. Often parents use that word, but actually, the healthier brother of shame is guilt. When you are at level guilt, so in therapy, we try to move people from shame, because if I feel it's something fundamentally wrong about me, I want to commit suicide, I feel like I'm wasting my life, I'm hurtful. And these days, you have lots of happening around that men feel they are being called toxic masculinity. So the masculinity is perceived as a wrong, something that is corroding, something and that need to change. But we want to change that feeling into feeling guilt, because with the guilt, you have already intention to get better, overcome, apologize, integrate yourself, and get out of that mud.
Yeah. Thank you, Janos. One of, it reminds me of this idea of the kind of Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset versus, I can't remember the opposite, it's ecstatic mindset. And Musar and Judaism is very growth mindset oriented. It's like when we're feeling shame, we don't feel like we can grow. We don't feel like we can change. But if we're feeling guilty, it's like, wow, I really stepped in the doo-doo there. I messed up, but I can scrape my foot off and I can apologize and I can try to do better next time. And that's, it's painful and it's a lot of work, but it's part of being a whole human being.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe some positive speech patterns here. Volunteer to read the middle bullet, please. Shelley, do you want to read this one?
I have no idea how to say those names in the bottom though. But sure.
Okay.
Before you open your mouth, be silent and reflect. What benefit will my speech bring to me or others?
Here, I'll help you out here. It's Rabbi Menachem Mendel Levin from Heshbon Hanefesh. And Heshbon,
Great.
What's that?
A great phrase.
Yes, and Heshbon Hanefesh is in Hebrew means accounting of the soul. It's actually one of something we do on Yom Kippur when we're reviewing our life, and it's also a term for journaling. It's reviewing your day, or reviewing kind of how you did.
Nice.
So, what is Rabbi Levin's advice here?
For being silent. I'll answer that. You know, I'm somebody that constantly talks, sometimes spirit almost too much. And this week I was communicating, but at the same time, I was being mindful of how my speech was to those people. Um, you know, it wasn't coming out as an attack, and it was a share back and forth. And so with every client, before I would start talking, you know, about my week and about the amazing universe that gives us signs on a daily basis, um, I was always mindful of what I was to say to them. I would ask myself, what am I to share to them?
Mhm.
And so that's how I take that.
Yeah, thank you. So stopping to think, what is it you want to share? What else?
Sometimes speaking has no benefit to anybody. Sometimes speaking your mind, even though you know it's going to fall on deaf ears, feels good to you. I got it out there. You can do with it as you will. I'm done. Other times, when you know it's going to fall on deaf ears or just going to make somebody angry, then it's kind of pointless. Unless your point is to make somebody angry, which is kind of a foolish point if you ask me.
It's generally not a good strategy, as we talked about last week, because when someone is angry, you know, the wise forget their wisdom and the prophets lose the power of prophecy, and just nothing good happens when people get angry. I really like this sort of very specific and actionable advice from that, and I'll bring it up again as we transition to the next slide. What benefit will my speech bring to me and to others? So it's not only being silent and reflecting, it's really trying to proactively almost create a strategy. It's like, well, who's gonna benefit from this? You know, it's like, okay, I'm asking to place out of this class. Who's going to benefit? I'm going to benefit because it's not a class that works. But there's other ways I could have said it. I mean, I could have said, this is boring, it's redundant, I don't like it. You know, that may not have had the same impact as just saying, here's the syllabus, I've read these 2 books. Then there's nothing to talk about. Then it's not whether I find it boring or not. It's not whether I learned something or not. It is sort of straight and to the point. Someone also brought up rebuke earlier, and Joanne, you were talking about this.
Right.
You know, so maybe could you please read this advice from Maimonides?
Yes. One who rebukes another should administer the rebuke in private. Speak tenderly and be clear it is for the person's own good. Maimonides.
Thank you. We talked about Facebook strategies last year, and sometimes there was one time when someone had written something on the Facebook page, and I answered and asked them to take it down, and they answered, it's like, you're right, I should have taken it down, but I really wish you had messaged me privately, you know, because you kind of publicly rebuked me. And I was like, okay. And so now it's one of the things that I think about, like, am I going to send someone a private message asking them to change their post, or do I do it publicly? And it's not always private, but I think it's one more thing to think about.
Yeah, I have a student who does that to me all the time when I send out things to my class between class sessions in an email. He does reply all and chastises me or points out something he thinks is a contradiction or something. And I don't always agree with him, but now I have to reply all too, when I would have rather just had it just be between the 2 of us and not have to bring everyone else into this discussion. So I'm not fond of the reply all feature anyway.
Yes. Well, perhaps your whole class can just take a look at this quote and realize, you know, that sometimes, and there's a lot of reasons why we might, you know, we can imagine, you know, I'm not saying this is what your student's doing at all, but I could sort of think of myself, you know, there's some times where I'm going to take somebody down in public and it's going to be like this whole thing. Look at me, and I've got like this whole thing going on. And this is, I have to say, speaking tenderly, when I have to like give someone some feedback, often I'm not feeling very tender at those moments. So it is, you know, it's another reason to kind of stop and slow down and think about how you want to do this. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin, he wrote a wonderful book, which I highly, highly, highly recommend, Words That Hurt, Words That Heal. And he has a section he talks about, he calls it fighting fair. You know, it's like when you're in an argument with someone, you know, someone who's a friend or someone who's close to you, that's where he gives this piece of advice. May I have someone to read this?
No.
Carrie?
Okay, I'll read it again. If you want to make someone open to your criticism, don't say always or never, because you compel your listener to act defensively.
So what's that about? What happens when we say always or never to someone?
Well,
You think of counterexamples.
you're tossing a kitchen sink rather than dealing with something very specific.
Yeah, yeah. It's absolutes don't work. They just they don't work because nobody always does something or never does something or never
Oh,
can.
listen to me. I'm listening to you right now. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we get into the absolutes, it doesn't help. And it's I think part of the point he's making is that it's an escalating pattern. You know, it's not a pattern. Again, if we go back to our advice from Rabbi Levin, okay, well, what benefit, you know, it's hard when we're getting upset, but even if we take that pause, okay, will it be beneficial if I bring up an always or never situation to resolving like this current challenge? All right, I have two more examples I wanted to share with you. Last week, I went through sort of 4 responses to kind of obnoxious speech on the internet, and I thought of 2 more, and then we'll break up into our groups again. So the first one, this one we didn't look at before, you know, I call it offering a solution. And this was actually from Nextdoor, which I don't know if anyone uses Nextdoor, but it's supposed to be like this really nice app to like say, you know, to talk to your neighbors. And it is so toxic sometimes. It's unbelievable. And so this person posted a picture of a cat and said, this cat's been hiding in our bushes and I'm allergic and cleaning up after them. Remove this cat so I don't need to call someone to have it removed. And so when I read this really upset me because actually when I was a boy, my favorite cat got poisoned by the neighbor because it kept going in her bushes, you know, so it's brought back all kinds of trauma. And the person across the street said, oh yeah, that's our cat, let us know. And so I thought about it and I realized, you know, okay, I knew there's something called cat repellent, which is like something which smells bad to cats. And we had a cat in our bushes a few years ago, so use this. And I said, hey, you know, there's a safe cat repellent and they won't like the smell and they'll leave. And they said, thank you, good to know, I'll look into that. So again, where I started out being like aghast that this person was threatening a cat who's just doing what a cat does, I realized that I actually had a solution to offer and I could just solve the problem. You know, was this person a jerk for threatening the cat? Yeah, probably. But they were also super upset. And so I was able to offer them a solution. Okay, so this is one we talked about last week, which is setting a boundary. You know, this is not allowed on the page. And then this was number 3, which is looking for a commonality. And again, someone who was sort of calling me an extreme and typing in all capital letters, sort of ended up being like, oh, thank you for asking about what I'm interested in. And they had sort of went from being really obnoxious and offensive to, you know, someone who, you know, I could at least have a conversation with. And then the 4th one, many of you may have seen my email from last week, about which I called the Pharaoh and the President. And one person replied and said, you know, all kinds of horrible and repugnant things, which I'm not going to repeat. And, you know, he's the real Pharaoh, please take me off the list. And boy, was I burning up about this, and all kinds of slander, Talmud quotes, and all kind. I was ready to go to town, and I didn't say anything. And I thought about our quote from last week, which was, you know, just as it's a mitzvah to give advice that will be heeded, it's also a mitzvah to give advice that won't be heeded. And rather than try to rack my brains trying to find some little sliver of a way that maybe I could get through to this person, I just unsubscribed them to the list, and I didn't answer, you know. And one of the real challenges is figuring out what can you say that will be heeded or won't be heeded. But it really is okay just to ignore someone or disengage, and in some cases to block people. You know, I hate to lose relationships, but you know, that was this person's decision to kind of remove themselves from the community, you know, and rather than just hit the unsubscribe button, they decide to kind of flame at me. But that's their issue. So once again, we're going to break into groups, and kind of similar to last week. You know, imagine a circumstance where someone doesn't, you know, write something that's obnoxious, and think about like giving a response, but also, you know, try to, you know, which sets forth one of these 4 conditions, but also keep in mind, like, not shaming them. You know, like, even if they've said something obnoxious, you know, how can you respond in a way which doesn't shame them, even if they're really out to lunch, like in this case number 4, where you know, I certainly could have gone to town if I wished, but that wouldn't have done any good. So is that clear to everybody? I will set up the breakout rooms. Janos, thanks for letting us know. Bye-bye, and we'll see you next week. So we'll probably have only a couple of minutes in the room, so just, you know, talk about what you can talk about. Joanne, do you see the button there? There we go. For those of you that are watching on Jewish Live, this is where I'm going to stop the streaming. Please feel free to jump over to the American Musar Facebook page if you want to participate in conversations, or join by Zoom next week. Once again, thanks so much, and we will see you soon. Stop the live stream. That is it for the live stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Well, I'm sorry that was probably shorter than you liked, and we don't have a lot of time left till we close our session, but does anyone have an insight that they or an experience that they'd like to share from their breakout room?
My question is, does public shaming apply to people in politics? Or is that just standard procedure?
I'm sorry, are you asking if it's okay for you to shame someone who's a politician?
For politicians to shame one another, they do it all the time. And now
Well,
that
Some of them are
my-
not able to be feel shame, apparently.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think they could feel shame is right.
thinking
I
right
think
now,
the key part of your question is people and politics. And these are people we're talking about. And these are moral and ethical guidelines to help us live a better life. So I would absolutely, I don't think every politician shames other politicians, but there are certainly a lot of very toxic characters running around the political world.
That's true.
Very true.
Yeah.
What our current president is trying to do is bring back politeness and honor and respect in conversation. I think he's addressing that very issue with his inauguration speech and some of I haven't been following up what he's been saying recently, but I think that was what his message was. To me, it was a very Musar type speech. Let's get with the program, people. Start respecting one another, start honoring, start listening. Get rid of the other stuff, the negative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he never said, we all need to agree about everything.
Right.
But there is, respectful speech and there's disrespectful speech. And there's humanizing disagreements and there's dehumanizing disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I heard him. They had a big swearing in period that he was in. It was about 1,000 people online, and he pretty much said, "If I heard you disrespecting any of your fellow colleagues, you're going to be fired on the spot." So he made it pretty clear that he's not going to put up with it. And so I thought that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's what we call setting a boundary, right? And that's an example of setting a boundary. It's like, you work in this here, this is kind of what's expected. Okay, my friends, well, let us close our eyes once more and take just a moment of gratitude for this opportunity to spend an hour together each week. We don't know where we're going, but we can know that we have this opportunity to be together once a week for an hour and speak from the heart. For that, I am very grateful. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you next week. And yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.